Had I started my journey as a businessman with zero capital, I would have been 10 times richer than I am now. But I began with a colossal deficit. There has never been a dull moment on this journey. I fulfilled my father's desire to pay off the group's debts, built a sound foundation for the business that has been in the family for 3 generations, and I'm leaving it in the secure hands of professionals. I have enjoyed the risks I took and the disruptions I caused along the way. This is the true measure of my success as I get ready to hang up my boots. This is the story of TT Jagannathan, who is the third generation founder of TTK Prestige. Hello and welcome. This is Puneet Surana, and you are listening to Galata. I am really thrilled to share this founder's story with you today. It's unfortunate that he passed on very recently, but then his autobiography is what I've discovered, and it is crazy. I want to start off where the autobiography ends. I have 3 simple rules for running a business. Get down to the office every day, look at the details, don't see the big picture, look at the small picture. The big picture will look after itself. Apply your common sense and not just what you read in textbooks. It's important that you get to work every day and you look at the details, because it's in the details where you lose money. You only have to look at our business to see how things can go wrong if one looks only at the big picture. My father started businesses that were great. The big picture was fantastic. It was the detail that it went wrong and in the way everything was executed. You need acumen and a lot of common sense. You must not be afraid to apply your common sense. It's largely the elementary things that work. When I came up with the GRS, which we'll discuss about in the episode, for the pressure cooker, all I invented was just a hole in the lid. But the company would have gone bankrupt if not for that hole in the lid. All it took was common sense to fix the problem. Get to work every day, look at the details, and use a lot of common sense, the most uncommon trait of all. If all you wanted to learn from TT Jagannathan, this would suffice. But I love his story. It gives me goosebumps, and I'm going to get to the start of the story. You and I are studying TT Jagannathan, but we got to study the founder of TTK Prestige, which was TTK. And some highlights which I found in another book which are worth understanding, because you can't appreciate TT Jagannathan until you see the journey the company has been until that point where he steps in. So a few highlights from another book. I'm going to link the book's titles and everything in the show description as well. This is India's Industrialists, Margaret Herdick and Geeta Pirmal. And I was really lucky to find this book when I was researching TT Jagannathan in my library at Indian Institute of World Culture. And there's this entire chapter dedicated to just TTK. I was thrilled because I really wanted to place the founder of the entire group in the right light. And I'm glad that now I can. So a few highlights and a few lessons from him because it is so critical. TTK was born in Madras in 1899, the only son of a Brahmin High Court judge who expected his son to follow in his footsteps. Graduating from Madras Christian College, TTK entered government service for a brief time before startling his family and friends by going into business. Joining A.R. Doraiswamy Iyengar in his indenting firm in Madras. Indenting firm is like a franchisee firm. TTK worked unpaid in order to learn the agency business firsthand from the man who represented the biggest industrial names worldwide, Levers and Beechams of the UK. When Doraiswamy fell ill in 1926, 5 years after TTK had joined him, TTK ran the business himself, still without any compensation. Well, his well-to-do background luckily permitted him to do so and also helped minimize any anxiety a Brahmin father might feel because of his son's involvement in trade. When Doraiswamy died in 1928, TTK was in Cochin to establish a branch office. While many companies sought to win the Lever Brothers agency, And the government even got into the act by suggesting a few names. TTK carried on Doraiswamy's business. Levers was so impressed with TTK's perseverance in face of uncertainty that they awarded him their agency. He then set up his own company, TT Krishnamachari and Company, to expand his business activities. From the mere booking of orders, TTK began a warehousing and distribution operation in South India. His dogged journeys throughout the South to market a wide variety of consumer goods brought him the affection of his customers and success in business. His business exploits even won the admiration of his social set in Madras, which had almost by decree questioned what a Brahmin boy was doing selling levers soaps in the hinterlands. He immediately set about changing the way Doraiswamy had been doing business. Rather than just book orders and pass them on to the manufacturers, TTK set up his own warehousing and distribution network, selling directly to the dealers all over South India. He implemented an entirely modern approach to selling, trying new techniques such as skywriting, point of purchase displays, in which the group still excels. I'll tell you more about it, and modern market surveys to learn firsthand what consumers wanted. He preceded many of his salesmen's footsteps throughout his territory. Sometimes he followed in their footsteps, studying the effects of their salesmanship. TTK's success in business helped make business fashionable among conservative Madras society. From 1928 to 1940, TTK and Company continued to add more products to its portfolio, including Sunlight and Lifebuoy soaps. Krishnamachari, the TTK, K stands for Krishnamachari, found an effective way to ensure their presence and recall in every home by distributing calendars printed with images of gods and goddesses alongside the Sunlight and Lifebuoy logos. There was not a single home, perhaps, that didn't have these calendars in those days. So simple and effective was this idea that modern branding and advertising strategies pale in contrast. So TTK also had another franchisee that he had taken up, which was Seymour, and here's a bit about it. The first product to be handled as a result of the Seymour connection was Pond's face cream. More than 150 products would follow. TTK and Company was to distribute West clocks, alarm clocks, Kraft cheese, Kellogg's cornflakes, Schaefer pens, Aqua Velva aftershave lotion, among a host of items which became household words around the world. TTK and Company used its marketing skills to make them household words in India as well. So TTK is like this gentleman on a horse riding event, and he's just betting on the horses that will win. He goes around the world, tries to look at companies and brands and brings them into South India. That is what is I gather is an indenting agency, and Seymour is just the third that company that he's now working with. TTK was really a pioneer, and you will see that in a few aspects very clearly. Not only was he doing the import to South India and then sell it across in his distribution network, he also got into manufacturing. And this is where the Prestige brand that we talk about comes in. Again, Prestige was a company based out of Europe, is what I understand. TTK took the franchisee of it for South India and he decided to manufacture, but it was a Herculean task. Hear this out. At first, the problems presented by having to install the 250-ton imported deep drawing press caused those involved to doubt whether the project could get off the ground. A crane was brought from Calcutta, the electricity board provided trailers, the highway authority gave special permission to move the press by road, and finally, hundreds of persons from a private company were pressed into service to erect the giant press. But because of power shortages, even in Bangalore, the plan had initially to operate at night. Since the power was insufficient, the tool room, die casting, and compression molding had to be shifted elsewhere until 1963 when power supplies improved. Eventually, the demand for the cookers was so great that other products being manufactured at the Bangalore site had to be moved out to make room for the prestige expansion. The key to TTK's success with its pressure cookers was its attention to demonstration marketing. Sales would stall unless dealers and customers were instructed in the use of the new gadgets. The mass demonstrations organized by TTK and Company proved immediately successful. Again, TTK is a pioneer and he really understands marketing and distribution, because you get to see this demonstration marketing continue to date with all their new products, and it has only grown with their scale. And as I get through TT Jagannathan, you will see that coming across. Um, Here's the next highlight. Just as TT Narasimhan had believed in the potential market success of the Prestige cooker in the absence of any hard market data, he had been just as confident in the early 1950s when he began importing Durex condoms that one day the condom would become the popular family planner it has. He was convinced, he said, that if India could become flooded with tens of millions of simple and cheap contraceptives, such as condom protectives, many of its problems would be overcome. It was fortunate that the government felt similarly. India was the first country to make family planning an official part of its national development policy. LRC Limited, which is London Rubber Company that actually manufactures the condoms, Durex and other brands, promoted by the TTK Group. He partnered with LRC London Rubber Company or London Rubber Corporation Limited and the TTK Group, and they came up with LRC India Limited. So LRC India and TTK together was a pioneering effort on the part of Indian industry to help meet the country's fundamental development needs. My highlight here is it took a decade for it to materialize, and also the story of Durex started by Lionel Jackson from the back of a barber shop in London is fascinating. I got to study this man. If you have anything about Lionel Jackson, please send it across to me. I'd love to study it. I think Durex is one of the greatest brands in terms of marketing in the country, and I would love to study and make an episode about it. So, what happened is TTK built up not just his indenting business, but he also expanded, like I said, with LRC, with Seymour. He was really rich by the time I think he was 35, 40. Overnight, he decides to leave the business and get into politics, where he becomes a local MLA, and then he gets in touch with Nehru. And because of the bonding and the rapport that Nehru and he has, he gets into the part of Nehru's cabinet. And through the entire politics side of his life, he is not involved in the business, but as you will see, he is going to keep coming in the way of the business and keep it's like he's going to chop the legs off the business he set up. But that's much later. Initially, and that's where I got the clarity from this book, that there's this entire phase where he was really pro industries, pro business. Hear this out. And then he gets into the financial ministry and then completely ruins that image. But when he was industries minister, here, read this out. I'll read this out for you. His business experience had given TTK an empathy with entrepreneurs, and as industries minister, he was to give his support to anyone if he felt they could put together a successful venture. When the Birla Group was frustrated in its attempt to set up an iron and steel mill because the sector had been reserved for the state, TTK helped them set up an aluminium plant in Uttar Pradesh in collaboration with Kaiser Aluminium of the USA. TTK knew that if India pushed for self-development of her people and her economy, there would be interest from the rest of the world in joining hands with her. So he was pro industries. In fact, there's a sense that I got that just his nod was enough at times for companies to go ahead and set up the plant, because that literally meant a yes. Cut down a lot of paperwork, gave free hand to a lot of industries to go and build and set up plants. This is again right around the time of freedom. So kudos for him. But here's where things change, and I think I'll get to that. In Delhi, TTK's popularity with industrialists was to end abruptly when he was appointed finance minister by Nehru in 1956. The 1956 industrial policy drafted by the government, in which TTK had a large role, had made clear the government's intent to reserve a large chunk of strategic industrial development for the public sector. This had followed on the heels of a resolution introduced in Parliament in 1954, which declared that the pattern of economic policy must be a socialist one. Accumulation of private wealth and conspicuous consumption would have to be curtailed. The vehicle was taxation. The 1957 budget, presented to Parliament by TTK as finance minister, poured a mountain of ice over the heady ambitions of India's private businessmen. Wealth taxes, gift taxes, expenditure, and capital gains taxes, recommended by the Calder Committee, were to number the days of legal accumulation of wealth and were to make it difficult for industrialists to retain private control of the enterprises they were erecting with heretofore untrammeled dynamism. Needless to say, the budget brought down the wrath of India's industrialists. And I'm going to go deeper into this because some in the business community did not choose to split hairs. They struck back at the finance minister. A scandal broke out in the Ministry of Finance over the questionable allocation of funds. Though TTK was not involved in the Mundra affair, as it was known, he ended up handing in his resignation. Industrialists had had their temporary revenge. In the process, they alienated a man who had been their friend. The breakdown in the communication over the means by which to achieve a greater social and economic equity in the system pitted two important segments of the society against each other. The socialists in parliament and the bureaucracy looked down upon private capitalists as no better than the Western Firangis who had finally been shown the door in 1947. Indian industrialists, on the other hand, were ready to become full fledged nationalist businessmen in their own right after independence. Regardless of what they had been before, they came to resent the politicians holding them at arm's length while expecting support around election time. My note for this highlight has been still exists today. You get to see this even today. Here's where TTK ends up coming in the way of the business as the finance minister. With one of the widest distribution networks in the southern half of the subcontinent and an inventory of prestigious products, the growth which should have ensued for the group in the 1950s and 60s, an era of rapid growth for most of India's industry, was not realized. During this period, the founder of the group was serving in the Lok Sabha and as Nehru's Minister of Industries and Commerce, and then as Finance Minister. While TTK presided over and was in great part responsible for the most dynamic period of post Indian independence industrialization, his son's firm in Madras diversified into manufacturing but did not venture too far or wide from its initial business of representing other manufacturers' products in the South. Any bold moves to grow fast or big would have required political clout. To obtain funding, licenses, and other industrial approvals could always lead to criticism that the group was misusing the influence of its founder, who now moved in the inner circles of power. Thus, a low profile was maintained for more than 20 years or so. Imagine that. My note is just imagine that being a bottleneck to your own business's growth. But for 20 years, when he wasn't involved, but his son was running the entire venture, it's madness because he passed law that would restrict import to a drastic measure. And you understand his scenarios also. But for the business in Madras, this was like a death blow because majority of the revenues coming in was coming in because of the imports of the foreign goods that they were manufacturing, that they're marketing in India. Then they start manufacturing, but then again there is a blow with terms of taxations, multiple taxations, sometimes even more taxations than the income. So you had to literally borrow money to pay the tax. Can you believe that? It's crazy. I think there's one more highlight right here. Let me read that out for you. The imposed reticence of the 1950s and 60s, while the founder was in the thick of Delhi politics, has ended. It was a terrible time for the TTK business entity because his son couldn't do much. With the imports restricted, with manufacturing extremely stringent and limiting, it was really, really hard. And this is the period where these agencies started breaking the joint venture and get going on their own in India. So their revenue streams were getting cut left, right, and center. I think these 20 years where he was at the cusp of power, the the organization just limped forward. Soaps, chocolates, pens, clocks, cosmetics, and condoms. The TTK group was among the earliest to introduce several such Western goods in India, building up a vast network of distributors. Close to 150 products of the major multinational companies of the time came to India through TTK. Sunlight and Lifebuoy soaps, Beecham and Cadbury, Kraft cheese, Kellogg's cornflakes, Chauffeur pens, Aqua Velva aftershave lotions, Horlicks, Maclean, Enos, and many more. And then it lost them all. Now understand something. TT Jagannathan's grandfather started the entire empire and built it. His father continued the legacy, but he took over the business somewhere around his 18 or 19 years old, when he was 18, 19 years old. And by the time he was 50, he was just burnt out. So he goes to his second son, who is TT Jagannathan, in US, and he drops a bomb. You need to come home now. The family business is collapsing. You have to come back and do something to save us. These unexpected words, uttered on a beautiful spring day of 1972 by my father at a restaurant in Ithaca, changed my life forever. While TTK was regarded as the great brand across India, the group's net worth was negative at the time. There were 20 companies engaged in a variety of businesses, and except for one, none was in a healthy state. The group was running on borrowed money, and its combined debt at that time amounted to rupees 10 crores, equal to about 1,000 crores today. As we finished our meal, father told me, "You need to come home now. The family business is collapsing. You have to come back and do something to save us." My first and incredulous reaction was, "Why is it in trouble and why can't you or Papu, his elder brother, Ranganathan, handle it?" I had always assumed that as the eldest son of the family, Papu would take over the business from my father. This had influenced my choice of becoming an academic, but father said he's not going to do that. You have to come and help. A second revelation followed. Papu had become an alcoholic and was in no condition to run the business. And my younger brother, Raghunathan, was far too young at that time. Well, I think Papu ended up with alcoholism and he ended up dying in his very early 30s. So all the burden of the family, and this is much before that, but all the burden of the family ended up coming to TT Jagannathan. In fact, he was so confident that it's going to come back and fix the business, that he didn't even take most of his stuff from Cornell University, where he was doing his master's. He thought he's going to come back in a year. He's going to fix it and come back in a year. His continual academic PhD studies or something like that back in Cornell. And just to understand TT Jagannathan, he really had, I mean, the note that I've written for this highlight is he's got balls. He tried to get into Loyola College in Chennai when he was studying here in Chennai, and he didn't make it. But he studied through and got into IIT Madras. And here's a highlight that this my note was, he's got balls. In my third year at IIT Madras, the principal of Loyola College had been invited as a chief guest for the hostel day celebrations. In his speech, he said all the toppers at IIT were from Loyola. I got up and said, "No, I'm sorry. I am the topper here and I'm not from Loyola because you did not give me admission." I have to admit, I enjoyed that moment. And here's the difference that TT Jagannathan saw between his studies at IIT Madras and his studies at Cornell University, which is what I think led him to send all his sons to Cornell to do their studies as well. Hear this out. In India, they teach formulas based on which you make calculations and work out the answer to the problem you're asked to solve. In India, we don't define the problem but only find solutions to it. In the US, they want students to figure out the problem itself. Geniuses from India would go to America to study because the Americans are very good at defining the problem that is to be solved. In Cornell, I learned the importance of defining a problem, and this has helped me throughout my life. This highlight is where TT Jagannathan comes back to India and he realizes the mess he's in. While all the new businesses were driven by progressive thinking, their execution was not very sound. Father was a great ideas man. However, it's never enough to start a business on a great idea. The implementation of the idea has to be monitored. He also lacked a good team. If he had had a capable person to help run his businesses, he would have been one of the India's biggest businessmen, but he lacked management skills, and this proved to be his Achilles heel. Well, I think it's not just his father, it's also his uncle, TT Jagannathan's uncle, who's again a crazy founder or dabbler in my understanding of this group. And probably there's another book on him as well, which I will do an episode on because it's very interesting. It's literally like he goes on starting businesses, gets bored, and then starts another business, gets bored, starts another business. But then he abruptly leaves all businesses and gets involved in the music scene in Chennai. And today, in fact, December is where you have this entire month-long music festival in Chennai. And he's the reason behind it. It's a fantastic story in itself. I think I'll cover that once I get my hands on the book. I'll list the name of the book in the show description. If you have it, please do send it across and I'll make an episode on that. But back to this book. All of these highlights are from Disrupt and Conquer, which TT Jagannathan and Sandhya Mendonca co-wrote. The first thing that TT Jagannathan did once he was back in India, remember that 1 year that he thought he's going to fix everything and then go back to Cornell? He tried to sell the businesses, but nobody would buy it. When the attempt to sell the businesses failed, I decided to rebuild the group, one company at a time. I started with maps and atlases as it was our biggest loss maker at the time. We were losing 60 lakhs a year from that company in 1972. It's unbelievable. That's more than 60 crores in current times. And I think more because this book was written in 2018. If there are problems on many fronts, it does not help to fiddle a bit in each of the problem areas. The correction would take a very long time and sink you in the process. So I picked the worst of the bleeding companies, maps and atlases, and in 2 years I turned it around. It took pure common sense to fix the problems in that company. His belief in common sense, in the current day, we say first principles thinking, is going to last throughout his career. Please understand the debt that TTK Group had when he stepped in was around 14 crores. And it took him almost 30 years to clear it off. We're going to discuss that later in this, but I'm just telling you, it's madness. And common sense was a key pillar in his ability to turn businesses around. Let's get into maps and atlases, the first business that he turns around. This is not only because Indians. Now, here's the problem, right? This was a business that was way ahead of its time in terms of the product and in terms of the scale in which they set up the manufacturing unit. I think they did a math of 1 billion Indians, 300 million kids. So I think 10 million maps would be required and they set it up. But hardly they were able to even sell. They're not even, there's not even market for 1 million maps. And here's why. This is not only because Indians share books, but it is also because students don't study geography thoroughly, which is critical for a proper understanding of the subject. The only maps that sell in India are outline maps, and we sell tons of them. I handle it in a very simple way. The first thing I did was to switch the focus from maps and atlases to printing. The logic was very simple. We had to get the business to start making money. I figured out how to price our products and went about generating business. I came up with a rate card in a simple manner too. I worked out the P&L for each printing machine, how much it cost us and how much we needed to make. It was easy to calculate the rate card once I knew the costs per sheet for a 3000 run or a 6000 run for 2 color or 4 color. I entertain myself by doing these calculations in my head. Again, an engineer's brain in action. We didn't have a sales team, and I went around on sales calls myself asking for orders. We took orders to print all kinds of things: books, pamphlets, posters. We printed school books for the Tamil Nadu government. We printed posters for the Congress party. We took on any job we could get. But it's still not enough to make the business generate money. Enough money. And here's where he comes up with another genius idea. Again, pure common sense. He looks around within the group, finds one of the products, reinvents the packaging so he can print the packaging as well, which is being outsourced. I suggested to father that we could reduce the size of the wrapping paper. We needed only 1/6 of the quantity of paper we were currently using to wrap the bottles. We could also print the blue color on white paper and print the label for the package. The staff at the Woodward's factory were worried. The product catered largely to the lower middle class, and the staff were apprehensive that customers would not accept the change in the product's appearance. They were in a state of panic, imagining it would harm sales. Resistance to change is endemic. I have experienced it many times over in our various operations and still do so. Well, my note is a maxim that I've studied over and over again. And I think David Sandra on his podcast Founders repeats it enough number of times to get into my brain. This is such a gentleman watch your costs idea. And with this, he's able to use the factory full time. I learned printing technology in our press and worked on the machines too. I have had that policy for my business my entire life. I won't sell at a loss. I'd rather not sell. Even today, even for orders of huge numbers of pressure cookers, we don't sell at prices that will not make money for us. He's had this philosophy every single time. And he's going to change it later on. We're going to discuss this further into the Prestige Cookers story. But understand, he's not going to sell for loss. He didn't sell the business for a loss. He will not sell these maps also for a loss just to get the order. There's an old saying, if you are a publisher, then you should never have a press. You tend to start publishing books that won't sell in order to feed the press. Then it becomes an unviable situation. Very few publishers have their own printing presses. Well, what he realized with his common sense was, we were never meant to set up the entire plant. We could have just done the joint venture with the European firm where they took the atlases from, and just printed it out, outsourced the printing, and just did what we do best, which is marketing and selling through a distribution channel. The mistake was in setting up the manufacturing plant, thinking it's a massive opportunity and it's going to start from day zero. But it was 30 years down the line. And that is where common sense helped. What helped me turn this loss making machine around? I did not know anything about managing a business. It is astonishing that people don't realize the value of common sense and hard work. I went to work at 8 a.m. and worked till 10 p.m. I was there every day until night, making sure the machines were running. If they weren't running, I had to figure out the cause. Because business is a lot of common sense, which is indeed the most uncommon of qualities. You don't need highfalutin MBA degrees to build a business. You just need common sense. Love this, love this. He's amazing in so many ways, and I think this is really cool. The second reason why there was so much of debt, one was of course starting so many businesses in parallel, and most of them were not making money except the prestige cooker business. Every other business was just making a loss. So the first thing that he realized was yes, he has to start plugging in the holes. But the second thing was the biggest of holes were the loans that they had taken. Now, 14 crores is a massive number by itself. It's probably 140, 150 crores in today's terms. But some of them were at 40% interest rates. And TT Jagannathan just couldn't wrap around how to solve this. The only support system he had, remember, his younger brother is too young. His elder brother, I think, has passed on by now through alcoholism. His father is completely burned out. The only person left is his mother. So he does the same emotional atyachar that his parents did on him to his mother and says, no, you have to come and help me sort out this business. She does a tremendous job. Now, understand this is, I think I'll just read the highlights and you'll figure out what kind of a business woman she was. I'm getting chills right now because I know where I'm going to get to in just a few minutes. But hear this out. Distressingly, we discovered that many of the senior executives had misused father's trust. They had got him to sign promissory notes to borrow at very high interest rates and continued to do so, almost 40%. That is financial suicide. They were not running the businesses efficiently or profitably either. To be ascertained carefully, and we took a long time to clean the stables. Mother had an impressive technique of dealing with them. She would summon the person in question to her office, look him in the eye, point to the issue that affected the company, and ask, please explain this to me because I am not a businesswoman. Her straightforward questions helped sift out the bad eggs, and many such employees left the company after realizing the game was up. Her attention to detail was phenomenal, and this is true of most women. Men tend to look at the big picture, but the devil is in the detail. One of the key lessons that I got while I'm studying TT Jagannathan and the Prestige, TTK Prestige Group in general is the attention to detail. It will kill you if you don't pay attention. It took 30 years to clear 14 crores of debt. And here's the sad part. We had whittled away the mountain of debts, which at its peak amounted to about 14 crores. The last chunk of that was 25 lakh rupees. My mission was completed 3 months after Padma Narasimhan, my mother, my rock, passed away. She did not live long enough to see the debts repaid in full in December 2002. My note here is it took about 3 decades to clear all the loans. That's pretty much an entire career of a professional. That is exactly why, when I started this episode, I told you if he had started the business with zero capital, he would have 10x or 100x the money that he has today. 3 decades to clear 14 crores. Oh my God. Today, the pressure cooker is an now we jump to the pressure cooker story. Today, the pressure cooker is an indispensable apparatus in every Indian kitchen, be it humble or luxe. India makes 15 million pressure cookers each year, and TTK Prestige accounts for a staggering 5 million of them. Prestige is by far the market leader, outpacing the closest contender, which is Hawkins, by a cool million, with the rest of the numbers being made up by small manufacturers who are mostly in the unorganized sector. Every third pressure cooker sold in the country bears the TTK Prestige label. Today cookers make up only 35% of the TTK Prestige business as the company went on to expand its scope, offering over 600 appliances for the kitchen and home. After he turned around the maps and atlases business, the second business he took over he took on was the pressure cooker. I'm laughing because when he took over the first day, the factory was in Bangalore. So when he came from Chennai to Bangalore, the first day, he was not even let into the factory. The gates were not even opened. The profits from the TTK pressure cooker business was being whittled away in all the loss-making businesses. And that is why there was deep resentment in every single worker, and it went all the way up till the MD of TTK Prestige Cookers. So when the MD was replaced by TT Jagannathan, they didn't even open the gate of the factory to let him in. He had to call cops to get into the damn factory that his family owned. And for 2 years, they didn't even let him sit in the MD's chair. Um, he had to literally take a table and chair from the factory floor, drag it into the office to the cubicle of the MD, and place it in a corner. And for 2 years, until he gained or earned the respect of the workers, he did not sit in the MD chair. I had to seek the intervention of the police to gain entry into the factory. Mine was a crazy start to his second initiative. No one entered the office or spoke to me for a whole month. I had brought with me an executive assistant from Madras. He used to sit in the staff room and would hear people talking about me. They thought I would destroy the company and close it down. The biggest challenge in front of me was to change their mindset and overcome their hostility. Failure was not an option. I needed the staff and their respect. They wouldn't listen to me and I couldn't sack any of them. Who would run the company if I did so? Their attitude said, "You might be the chairman's son, but we know more about this business than you do." And they were right. I knew nothing. True, I was an engineer, a gold medalist from IIT Madras with a master's degree in operations research from Cornell, but I had never used a pressure cooker in my life. I didn't even know how to operate it, and truth to tell, I was scared of pressure cookers. Whew, that's why I love biographies and autobiographies, because this is where founders share their vulnerability so candidly, and you get to see his position. If you want to know the truth about your product, go to the market and meet your dealers or customers. That's one of the things that he immediately started doing. He started visiting all the dealers and asking, and especially in the North India, because North India, the market share was just dropping like a rock. And he was trying to figure this out. And to his shock, he realized while traveling the length and breadth of Uttar Pradesh, I discovered to my shock that our pressure cookers were bursting. I met with dealers and visited warehouses where I saw the defective pressure cookers, and they were all prestige cookers. Small wonder then that our cookers were not selling. You can never get the right information, especially the bad news from third parties. Even if there was bad information, the staff in the factory would not share it with him. The first thing that he did to turn around the attitude of the workers in the prestige factory was immediately after him coming into the office, maybe a month or 2 3 months later, there was a huge aluminum shortage in the country, and they started putting sort of like quotas to aluminiums and how much it can get. So Prestige Cooker ended up in the wrong list of factories which got an extremely less amount of aluminium inputs which they could import. And TT Jagannathan went to Delhi, camped in multiple government offices for 3 months and turned it around and brought back the import of aluminium up for his factory. And that was one of the reasons why slowly the workers warmed up. The second, which is more important, was what he did after he figured out that these cookers are being burst. He used again common sense, engineering brain, to solve this problem. I can confidently claim that not a single prestige pressure cooker has burst since that day. The GRS is just a hole in the lid, but if it were not for that hole, the company would have gone bankrupt. The reason why the pressure cookers were bursting was because of um, fake spare parts that were being sold and installed in North India. And he plugged it right away by the GRS gasket release system that he invented, which was just a goddamn hole. And there's so many videos on YouTube. You should go check it out to understand what this does. But in simple common language, it acts like a second backup when the cooker fails to release the pent up pressure. And that's why it stopped. The amount of cookers being burst just went to zero overnight. Once the cooker business was up and running, especially in the North India, The next challenge was about marketing. And this is where now TT Jagannathan is a reluctant marketer. And the first insight that he gained was his immediate competitor, Hawkins, was a listed company. So it was always in news. And to crack this, he decided to take TTK Prestige public. Hear this out. As a private company, we were not in the news, whereas our competitor Hawkins was a listed company as well and was in the news all the time. So they got listed on the stock exchange. Another bit was how he has remained frugal throughout. Now imagine if you have to start taking care of every single paisa from the first day of your work, you will look at your costs. And that is why in like the 20, 25 years of his first half of his career, he did not buy a fancy car, did not live lavishly. In fact, he says, but a leopard can't change its spots. I'm very careful with money. In the last 16 years, I have changed my car only 4 times. Again, living frugally. I think there's one more highlight somewhere later in the book, which again reinforces this idea that he lives frugally. Another insight was just like his grandfather, TTK, was going around the world shopping for brands to bring to India, TT Jagannathan is going to shop around the world, especially fairs, to look for ideas that he can bring and he can Indianize. A few highlights for that insight. I continued to visit the National Houseware Show in Chicago as a pilgrimage of sorts for 15 years. Initially, though, we didn't bag orders, and it was only in our 5th year of the show that Macy's placed an order for Mantra cookers. Mantra was their international brand name, and it wasn't Prestige because they only owned Prestige's name in India. So they started another brand called Mantra. We didn't bag orders, and it was only in our 5th year at the show that Macy's placed an order for Mantra cookers when one of its cooker suppliers couldn't deliver. There was no looking back after that, and all the other big chains, Walmart, Kmart, Kohl's, JCPenney, followed, placing orders for our cookers. There's an entire story. I think we'll get into this as well, but just to highlight. So they in this trade show, they started at like the basement of the entire trade show that happened on multiple floors, and they slowly made their way up to the prime location. Trade shows across the world is a fantastic insight for entrepreneurs because I remember Aniket Jain episode number, I think 43 or 34, talks about how he kept going to a worldwide mobile conference. And the 4th year of the conference is where he was able to find somebody that he joint ventured with and then got his company listed. So trade fairs across international markets is a great place. The challenge was Mantra became bankrupt in a decade despite seeing a lot of success. And here's why. The market had begun to change. Walmart was destroying retail trade in a big way. It affected our customers who were big chain stores. Then the 9/11 terrorist attacks happened in the US in 2001. Together, these developments caused a dip in the US economy, and several of our customers went bankrupt. And that in turn made us bankrupt. There were only 2 kinds of pressure cookers. One kind was an outer lid and the other was an inner lid. Compared with these, Smart was a sophisticated product with many interfaces, an automatic lock, and 3 pressure modes. It could cook together various foods which required different cooking times and release steam to make these adjustments. So, quick precursor, there are just 2 types of pressure cookers. One is inner lid, where the lid goes inside the cooker, which was really popular in the North India. And then there's the outer lid, which is very popular in the South India. Now, the challenge is, before he discovered the gasket release system, North India was using inner lid most of the time, and inner lid cookers would burst, but the percentage of it would be really, really low. But outer lid cookers would burst left, right, and center because of the fake spare parts. Now, once he figured out the gasket release system, he did not patent it, but he made it free for all because he realized something in branding and marketing that is genius. He's like, cookers as a category has to be safe. Otherwise, 1 in 3 is a prestige cooker now, and it did dominate the charts earlier as well because it started really, really early, 1940s, right? So they realized that it can't be a category that is seen as risky in the consumer's mind. And I think it worked out really well. To date, he's credited for GRS, and they still have been able to capture 1/3 of the market in India. Phenomenal. We had a great concept, and now back to smart cooker. Smart cooker is what they came up with in their R&D lab in Bangalore, but it tanked, and it tanked terribly. And these lead to some multiple insights that I'm going to discuss with you. We had a great concept and fabulous promotion, but what failed was not the strategy or the design, but the manufacturing. This is a classic failure for a company. We went on to export 5 million pieces of the same cooker later, but did not sell a single one in India. They did a big launch and everything. And I think they had to recall like some 3 lakh cookers, these smart cookers, because they were failing terribly. And after that, they fixed the problem. They fixed also the way they launched products, which I'll get to in a minute. But then they were not able to sell it in India at all after that. I had thought, and oh, this is crazy. This turns a whole different leaf in how he's going to really unlock a big market for himself. I had thought that since we had a powerful brand, we could charge high prices, which would give us high profits per piece sold. But there was some resistance in the market. And with dealers offering lower prices, their margins came down with the result that they sold fewer pieces. Our strategy had failed. We reduced the margin sharply and began to make more money as the dealers sold more pieces. The money we make has gone up. Those days, our gross turnover was 100 crores and our margin was 40% of the sales. We cut it to 20% and our gross turnover has grown to 2,000 crores. From earning 40 crores from a 40% margin to on 100 crores in sales to earning 400 crores from a 20% margin on 2000 crores in sales. The earnings difference is huge. My note for this highlight is power of being generous. It does pay back, doesn't it? Entrepreneurship has generosity built into it. The second insight was this with the failure of smart cooker. Our opting for breadth came out of our learnings from the grave dangers that an increase in taxes had brought and the failure of our smart cooker. We had been overly dependent on cookers. By reducing our dependence on a single product, we could minimize risks for the company. We were determined that if something like a product collapse were to ever repeat, it would not pose as grave a hazard as it had before. Look, the failure of smart cooker almost killed the prestige brand, and my highlight was this is classic hedging, them expanding and diversifying their portfolio, and it's crazy how they do it. I'm going to get to it in a minute, but that's an insight. You got to hedge your product. You can't be a one trick pony. Until now, we had only been selling what we made, but we discovered that the intrinsic power of the brand could be used to the maximum. We leveraged the strength of the prestige brand and started sourcing products that we did not manufacture, such as stoves, small electrical kitchen appliances, mixed grinders, selling them under our brand name. The addition of a range of appliances set us on a high growth phase in 2003. We were confident that we had made the right move as we had a very good idea about what the customer wanted. My note is very clear. Licensing is where the money is really at. That's one. The second thing that I've now realized when I talk with you is he went back to his roots. This is exactly what his grandfather, TT Krishnamachari, did. He figured out the best brands to bring to India, and now TT Jagannathan is just figuring out the best products to bring in India and add an Indian twist to it, of course. And after selecting the right vendors, we began importing rice cookers, toasters, kettles, induction cooktops, and a host of other such products. These are made to our specifications and sold under Prestige brand. Here's a classic example, okay? I remember the days when my wife and I used to make karu vadam and vadam, which is South Indian papads, okay, at home each year in February. Because that was the only month when it wouldn't rain in Bangalore. The traditional method of extruding the dough and backbreaking work was the traditional method of extruding the dough was backbreaking work. We had to push the dough manually through perforated plates before spreading the papads out to dry on the rooftop and guard them against birds and the rain. In my parents' home in Madras, there was plenty of domestic help. But when we moved to Bangalore, Lata, who's his wife, and I couldn't afford extra help. A few years later, it occurred to me that the process of extrusion could be mechanized. This papad like snack was very popular, and I felt it could be a big business. I went to Italy to buy a pasta machine. Essentially, the machine is fed with a dough of white flour, which it extrudes in different shapes. For example, macaroni, spaghetti, farfel, I'm really butchering these names, and so on. The pasta machines didn't have a gelatinizer though. Gelatinizing does not involve gelatin, it is a term for the process of cooking starch. When you stir up a pot of maida, it acquires a gooey texture. This is the gelatinized starch that is extruded through a press. It is an important step in making the South Indian papad that I wanted. Pasta doesn't need to be gelatinized, so the Italian machines did not come with a gelatinizer, but the Italians did have a separate gelatinizer. So I took that, attached it to a pasta machine, gelatinized the starch, extruded it, cut it, and produced what we called friems. We launched friems in 1990, and look at the success it is today. And my note is France is a brand name of prestige. What the fuck? These guys are crazy. Because I thought France is what it's called all the time, but no. It became synonymous with the product itself. But you also see that this is exactly how he brings in products across the world to India. The fact that we are in constant touch with the market has proved helpful time and again. A consumer cannot tell you what she wants, but she can tell you what she doesn't like and what she has a problem with. I like to look at the pain points of the consumer and offer solutions. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful crystallization of business in general. They had been typecasted into a cooker company, right? And the challenge was they were just a one-trick pony, and now that they're expanding, the stores that their distribution setup to was not willing to take, especially the wired electrical appliances. So the big chain stores felt we were pressure cooker makers and did not want to stock our new range of electrical appliances. If nobody would sell our appliances, we would have to do it ourselves. You know the story. We decided. That's when we hit up on the idea of starting our own stores. This posed a new challenge, as setting up stores would require a lot of investment. After some deliberation, we decided to adopt the franchisee model, which saved us the huge investment we would have to make in building a chain of stores. When we offered the franchise for Prestige Smart Kitchen stores, allowing franchisees to sell our growing range of cookwares, cookers, and kitchen appliances, applicants from across the country lined up eagerly, thanks to a strong brand name. Well, my note is opportunities come in work clothes. That's a maxim that I've really noticed throughout this book. Now, the second bit was another challenge was we addressed a key worry, prices. We promised them that our stores would not undercut them. Them is the other the stores that are already distributing their products. We addressed a key worry, prices. We promised them that our stores would not undercut them and that our products would cost the same at our stores as in theirs. After their initial skepticism, the traders found their business eventually increased thanks to our stores. Here's why. Customers would drop in at the Prestige Smart Kitchen stores to take a look at the host of new products available and would go back to the usual store to buy them. This helped us too as it pushed up sales. We now have 541 smart kitchen stores across 291 towns and cities. 50% of these stores are owned and very efficiently run by women. This is how it works. Now, this is the retail model, right? This is how it works. If the retail price of a product is 100 rupees, the distributor buys it from us at 30 rupees and sells it at 60 rupees, as the stores usually take a 40% margin. We have to manage raw material, manufacturing costs, depreciation, tooling, and profit within the 30%. If we sell our products ourselves, we can get twice this much, and our share would be 60% of the sale price. That's why it was more profitable for them to build out their own stores. Our philosophy was simple. We are here to sell our customers what they want. If the customer in North India wanted the inner lid pressure cooker, we were going to give them one. To differentiate our product from those of our competitors, we launched inner lid cookers with innovative shapes. One resembled a handi and another was apple shaped. We launched both in 2006. In the years after the triple whammy brought Prestige to its knees, we had a period of steadying consolidation and growth. We launched our own stores, started imports, launched more products, breached the north, and set up new plants. More importantly, we were no longer just a pressure cooker company. We had shifted to a different zone, becoming a kitchen appliances company. That's where the smart kitchen comes from. While we still have 150 models of the pressure cooker today, they make up only 35% of our turnover. Another insight that we see keep on repeating throughout the story of Prestiges. Brands are where the money is made. TTK made it through brands. TT Jagannathan or TTJ or Jaggu like he's called, again makes money through his brands. Brands are where money is made, and it is the same thing with Prestige in India. One can always start a business, but it takes a long time to establish a brand. We did not have the money or the time to build a new global brand. Remember, Mantra went bankrupt. The criteria they use for a new global brand is unbelievable. And that is exactly why it took them so long to find something that fits rightly. The first condition was that the company we acquired must be smaller than TTK Prestige. This would allow us to not only quit the business if it failed, but also ensure that its failure wouldn't affect our regular business. The second condition was that it should be a profitable business. If it wasn't making profits, I wouldn't be able to get it from India. It was important that it have a good management with whom I could work and help make more profits. The third condition was that the company should have brands that were established in the world markets. The fourth condition was that the company should have its own should not have its own manufacturing facilities. This condition was crucial as we have seen the huge problems that come with purchase of manufacturing bases abroad. The search for the right company took 10 years. We finally decided on Horwood Homesware Limited. Horwood is a century-old brand. It has been in operation since 1896 and is the largest table and cookware suppliers in the UK. It was a smaller company than ours. It did not have factories, but it had well-established brands. It has a strong brand equity and has experienced marketing, sales, and distribution strengths. Horwood ticked all the boxes in my checklist. Horwood owns leading brands such as Judge, Stellar, Horwood, and Kaufman, and also distributes other international brands, supplying over 2,000 table and cookware products across Europe. They went from a cooker company to a smart kitchens company, now to a home company. And he was able to narrow down on a very single criteria to expand into, which is genius. Hear this out. We picked cleaning solutions for three reasons. First, the consumer segment would be the same, which is mostly women. The homemaker who was already familiar with Prestige and trusted the brand. Second, we could use the same distribution channels we did for kitchenware. And third, we had developed in-house the world's first domestic electric mop, for which we have a patent. Our innovations are also a coming together of my twin passions of cooking and engineering. I often wonder if the many inventions that Prestige has pioneered would have happened had I not been a keen chef. This is a question I cannot answer definitively. My note is he's using his own products all the time. Cooking was not just a hobby, it was his feedback loop with reality. The best R&D lab is a busy kitchen. He liked to joke. It tells the truth in 20 minutes flat is exactly what he said in another interview. If you are a founder, you got to use your own products. You got to keep continuously using your own products, and you figure out the gaps and you understand the customer better. Hear this insight. This invention happened because I cook a lot and I'm also eager to see what and how others cook. I noticed that many people were using the cooker vessel to saute or fry vegetables or meat before pressure cooking them. It then occurred to me that we could make a vessel that was more suited to Indian cooking. The result of this was the pressure pan, which was ideal for cooking all the typical Indian foods that need seasoning, such as vegetable, chicken, and meat dishes and gravy. The fact that we are in constant touch with the markets has proved helpful time and again. A consumer cannot tell you what she wants, but she can tell you what she doesn't like and what she has a problem with. I like to look at the pain points of the consumer and offer solutions. He's shopping for ideas and products across the globe. Hear this out. Next, we tweaked the design of the induction cooktop. Originally, it had been designed for Chinese cooking, which involves stir frying for 3 minutes and no more. Indian cooking is not about 3 minutes of stir frying. It's about frying, sauteing, and pressure cooking. Many more processes go into Indian cuisine. We realized that we had to sell a product that could run trouble-free for 30 minutes and also be a solution for regular Indian cooking needs. Another innovation of his was microwavable pressure cooker. Hear this out. The microwavable pressure cooker cooks very fast as the food starts to cook as soon as the microwave facility is turned on. In conventional cookers, the water has to start to boil before the cooking process starts. Our microwave pressure cooker is fully automatic simply because the microwave oven is automatic. You can set the time, and I've never put a microwave oven as automatic until I read this book, okay? You can set the time and go away while it cooks your food, after which it will keep it warm. The taste of vegetables and meat from this method of cooking is fantastic, and we've been exporting over 1 million pieces a year to Japan alone, apart from selling in the UK, US, and Germany. The Indian market has been resistant to it, though. We have been working on a solution and are close to a breakthrough. Another way that I have highlighted is how he looks at his business, right? And what a beautiful metaphor this is for his career and his life. We are expert in pressure, after all. He's been in like a pressure cooker from day zero that he got into TTK Prestige and the overall group. Another insight, which is repeated now, is our innovations are triggered by our visits to the major global trade shows. We visit the major trade shows in Frankfurt, China, and the US and pick up ideas from there. We study the feasibility of these ideas and get design reviews done. Well, my note is idea shopping. That's exactly what he's doing across the world. We started work on the microwavable pressure cooker in 2005, and it went through many iterations before we finished it in 2011. It was very difficult to design, and we burst many microwaves in the initial stages of its development. Getting the process right was a challenge because we were moving from metal to composite. We were experts in metal, and handling composite was a big task. It required a lot of study and change. We have mastered it now and have many global patents for the microwavable pressure cooker. It's something in my to-buy list. Well, Prestige, if you're listening to this, please send one across. An advice he gave to his son, which I think is relevant for all of us, is To cook well, you have to practice cooking. My note is very simple. It's an Arnold Schwarzenegger maxim that I've imbibed for myself. It is a case of reps, 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 and mileage, mileage, and mileage. To cook well, you have to practice cooking. I was the daughter that my parents never had. I learned to cook, knit, sew, and play the violin. I did all the things that was normally a daughter would do in a South Indian family. Mother herself didn't knit, cook, or sew. But as I was very fidgety and to keep my fingers from getting into other things, she got someone to teach me knitting. I love cooking. I cook for myself, my family, my friends, and my colleagues. I learned how to use a pressure cooker from my mother in law. I like going to the shops to buy ingredients, but I can cook with whatever is available. We usually eat South Indian every day and occasionally make pasta or something different. There's a beautiful article about Appa cake, which became a Tata cake, which he prepares during the birthdays of his kids and now grandkids that he used to do. Interesting read if you want to do it. It will be linked in the show description. Moving ahead, I told him to practice. Cooking comes only by practice. You can read any number of books, but you have to practice, tasting your creation from time to time. What a great advice. He's giving it to his son, but I think it's relevant for all of us. Most importantly, he taught us that a good cook can use whatever is available in the pantry to make a good dish. Don't blame anything on the lack of ingredients. Whenever he came, there would always be many friends invited over for meals, and he would cook up a storm, usually leaving a trail of destruction in his path. While he's an excellent cook, he's terrible at keeping the kitchen clean while cooking. Well, now extrapolating this insight to his company. Company of cooks, undoubtedly. A passion for cooking drives me and our top managers. While I don't have an answer to the question of whether Prestige would have been as successful as it is today had I not been interested in cooking, Chandru, one of his employees, is quite clear that a love of cooking plays an important role. You're not likely to be successful in this industry if you don't know to cook. If you didn't cook and if you didn't love cooking, if I am going to talk to customers about their problems, unless I know cooking and I like cooking and also cook, I won't be able to even understand what they are saying. So it is important for us to be able to cook and gain an understanding of different cuisines. When we travel together, we typically don't stay in a hotel. We stay in an apartment and cook our dinner ourselves. It is a nice bonding activity with all of us taking turns to cook each day. What a fantastic insight. Always, always, always use your products. Compared with the huge automatic plants in China, Indian factories were cowsheds. This was his insight when he was trying to build his own plant. Another way that he looks at himself. Remember, he has a very different way of looking at himself. He looks at himself as a cook, an engineer, an expert in pressure. I'm a chief engineer of the company. I'm a mechanic, a process engineer, and a product engineer all in one. I headed the team that set up all the new factories and every single process in the factories at our company. My highlight is a classic. If you know your business from A to Z, there is nothing that you can't solve. And because he's rebuilt each and every part of his business, he knows from A to Z, and you cannot take him on a ride. Now, coming to the new tagline and how it revolutionized Prestige. Prestige evolves from just a cooker brand to a kitchen brand to a home brand. जो बीवी से करे प्यार वो Prestige से कैसे करे इनकार. When Abhishek Bachchan cooks a delicious meal and serves it to his lovely wife Aishwarya using Prestige cookers and cookware, of course, everybody goes ooh. Everybody knows Prestige because of this timeless line celebrating a husband's love for his wife. Our ads are everywhere on TV, in print, and online. We are among the largest spenders on advertising and marketing in the industry. Close to 6.5% of our costs are marketing and advertising spends, and this has been a consistent investment over the last 15 years. Our business has grown multifold and the ad spends have grown in proportion. My note is the observation that he was a reluctant marketeer or advertiser for a long time. After I realized that marketing was the name of the game, I was determined to understand it. And pick up the tricks of the trade. When pressure cookers were launched in India, it was a new market. We had to move people from cooking in pots to cooking in pressure cookers. They needed a lot of reassurance, especially regarding pressure cookers, as if they are not used properly, they can be dangerous. This is why demonstrating marketing was such a needle mover. Advertising communications plays a key role in making people understand the importance of maintenance, of replacing worn-out gaskets, etc. Our communication helped people recognize concepts such as shelf life, gasket, safety valve, and other such matters. It also reassured them that they were buying a premium product because of its safety and certification. We began to run integrated service and exchange campaigns apart from free service campaigns every 6 months. At one time, all our 400 dealers in Chennai ran the campaigns simultaneously. This was part of a uniform strategy for several years and became integral to our campaigns. These campaign communications serve two purposes. They build brand awareness and they help us remove the old cookers from the market, minimizing problems later. We scrapped worn out cookers and offered discounts on new purchases. What a win-win-win scenario. From dawn to dusk, you could choose from the TTK Group's vast portfolio of products to suit almost every need of yours. Deodorant, snacks, cookers, condoms, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and much, much more. In fact, they built the largest condom factory in the world. We supplied 40% of Durex's worldwide demand. Remember, I told you about London Rubber Company, how they brought it in the early 1950s, struggled for a decade to make money. Then, with the help of the government, they started making money. I mean, it's crazy that they were such an early mover in such a critical. It just shows how far ahead TTJ's father and grandfather thought. The Kohinoor, which was a condom episode, they had a they had a brand called Kohinoor that they lost. When LRC's Indian subsidiary got sold and again resold, the Kohinoor episode reinforced our decision to focus on our core businesses. We decided to promote only our own products, and even as we decided to stop distributing products of our other brands, we realized that we needed to fill the gap with our own customers, with our own consumer products. Score, which is a brand they came up with. After the split, Reckitt Benckiser, R&B, took both Kohinoor and Durex brands, and we bought the factories that belong to the TTK LIG joint venture. We set up the TTK Protective Devices Limited with the factories, which had the capacity to produce 2.1 billion condoms. We had the technology, we had state-of-the-art machinery, and we had the resources. We had everything but a product and a brand. Almost overnight, we had nothing to manufacture. This is where they lost both the Durex brand and the Kohinoor brand, but they came up with a new brand called Score. And when they started Score, they had a very different way to look at advertising and marketing. Remember, now he's really embraced advertising and marketing. Kohinoor, which is advertised as a married couple's family planning aid, we positioned Score as a premarital pleasure enhancer, and it clicked. He's extremely passionate about his company. He lives and breathes it. I have seen him in his office at 10 a.m. a day after he had a surgery that lasted 3.5 hours. Again, an insight from the first minute of this episode. You show up at work every day. Even in the years that we struggled, Mother insisted that we give 1/6 of our income to social causes. I think that it is the karma of the businessman to run a successful business, except that I am an accidental businessman. Again, another way that he looks at himself. My highlight here is a maxim that I've drilled into myself, and I think is valuable for you as well. It is a sin to build a weak business. I'll read this highlight again. I think that it is the karma of the businessman to run a successful business, except that I am an accidental businessman. I'm going to end this with what I started with. I have 3 simple rules for running a business. Get down to the office every day. Look at the details. Don't see the big picture. Look at the small picture. The big picture will look after itself. Apply your common sense and not just what you read in textbooks. It's important that you get to work every day and you look at the details, because it's in the details where you lose money. You only have to look at our business to see how things can go wrong if one only looks at the big picture. My father started businesses that were great. The big picture was fantastic. It was in the detail that it went wrong, in the way everything was executed. You need acumen and a lot of common sense. You must not be afraid to apply your common sense. It's largely the elementary things that work. When I came up with the GRS for the pressure cooker, all I invented was just a hole in the lid, but the company would have gone bankrupt if not for that hole in the lid. All it took was common sense to fix the problem. Get to work every day, look at the details, and use a lot of common sense, the most uncommon trait of all. Had I started my journey as a businessman with zero capital, I would have been 10 times richer than I am now, but I began with a colossal deficit. There has never been a dull moment on this journey. I fulfilled my father's desire to pay off the group's debts, built a solid foundation for the business that has been in the family for 3 generations, and I'm leaving it in the secure hands of professionals. I have enjoyed the risks I took and the disruptions I caused along the way. This is the true measure of my success as I get ready to hang up my boots. His pride in his sons was fierce, but free of succession anxiety. He encouraged them to pursue their own callings. One went to Cornell like him, one to MIT and into science, and winning major recognitions along the way. Companies need professionals, he told well-wishers who expected a dynastic script. Families need happy children. That's the better legacy. That is where I will leave it. For the full story, please do check out Sandhya Mendonca and TT Jagannathan's book, Disrupt and Conquer. The link will be in the show description. It's a great way to use that link and support the podcast for no additional cost to you. I highly, highly recommend this book. It's more relevant today than ever before. On that note, go and make some Galata.